Hello everyone, I'm back with some more journals to share. I have Traveler's Notebook inserts and folder inserts today that I wanted to share. I made two of each. There are two French themed junk journal inserts. Of course I can't talk. Two file folder inserts that are definitely gypsy themed, and then two journals that are boho gypsy themed. So I will just jump right in. I will just show you one of each. Whoops. Because they are the same. There are two, but they are as much the same as two journals can be, made by one person. So this is the French themed one. It has some toile fabric on the cover that has a pale blue background on it, and the scenes like country life type scenes. Sari silk is wrapped around it. It's not a permanent closure, it's just closing it for now. It has vintage lace on the front cover and then coffee dyed muslin stitched on the spine. So on the Sari silk is a hat pin. I believe they're called hat pins, or I don't think they're straight pins. I don't know what I'm talking about. But these were just some blanks that I picked up at a craft store, and I put one of my wooden charms on it, which has vintage wallpaper in the background and a tiny little dragonfly charm on the front. And I think it would look great pinned anywhere. You could pin it to the front cover, you could pin it inside the book, you could put it on the lace. You could wear it if you wanted to. It is entirely up to you. So inside the book we have more fabric. This is a different kind of toile fabric. The cover is made of cardstock with the fabric stitched on, and the edges, oh, there's fuzz everywhere. The edges were left frayed. So let's get my brain together and then I'll be able to tell you what we're doing. What we have here, we have a little fabric pocket here with a vintage image journaling card tucked in. This is a index, like a file divider type cardstock that I just covered. It had a letter on it and I just covered it with a blank label. You could write anything you wanted to on there. There's some lace. There's a paper clip here with two beads. One is a pearl bead, and it is clipping on a vintage image of a postcard, which you can write on the back of. All of the papers are coffee dyed, and I did some stamping throughout. This is some French text for interest, picture of Marie Antoinette, a collage of some paper and fabric, an image just stitched on to make a tuck spot for some vintage ephemera that I printed out. This is a double pocket made with an envelope. So behind the envelope is a collaged journal card with some very old tissue paper and a stamped image and some fabric, and it has lots of writing space on the back. There's some stamping done on the envelope, and inside is just a little piece of paper for journaling. And there's fabric and some cheesecloth stitched here to the bottom. On the other side is another pocket with some fabric and trim and a tag for journaling. Some more stamping here on this page. A flip out page, which I just wanted to point out to write on this part. If you wanted to, you can just flip it backwards and write on it that way to make that easier. Another vintage image for journaling, and a little tag there. A fabric tab, a paper heart doily, some more stamping, another stamp there. This is a page from a book about Notre Dame, and I just covered up some of the wording, but you can still see that it's talking about France and Paris, and it may mention Notre Dame, but I'm not sure. A large label tag here that you can journal on. This is a vintage image of the map of Paris which I got from Graphics Fairy. I left the strings long from stitching the papers in so that you can add a charm or bead if you choose to, or you can just trim them short. The other side of the book page, I just stitched on a bit of pattern paper. You can see the inside of Notre Dame there. This has a lace tab, some vintage ephemera printed on that, a little fabric flip, oops, with, this is some vintage, I can never remember what it's called, stationery. Why can't I think of that? With some lace on there. This is a vintage postcard from Paris. It says where it's from here. I'm not even going to try to read that because I don't speak French. You can tell it's old. It doesn't have a date on it, but I guarantee you it is old. With trim and fabric. The other side of the envelope pocket, which has a printed image here for journaling, as well as some extra pattern paper. Of course, I collaged some images or some labels here with some papers. Here's a tuck spot made of this vintage image of some flowers with just a card for journaling and some fabric. Another flip, some pattern paper and some fabric. This is the other side of the index card with another pocket. This is just an envelope, a little bag of stickers and more papers and tags and things like that that I put in there that you can add to your book if you choose to. This is just a tag that I inked up and stamped with some French text and a little rose. And there is the back, and that's that for the French insert. Get some room for myself here. This one is a Boho Gypsy. It has a few images of gypsies. Mostly it is just bright and colorful and very bohemian looking in my opinion. Attached to the spine here with a garment pin is a sari silk tassel, which has a boho bead in it and a little copper tag thing, charm. This is just tied with some sari silk, which is again not permanently attached. This one did come out kind of chunky. It could easily be put into an insert though if it just had the one journal in it. Or I feel these journals could easily just be used on their own. They don't need a cover. You don't need to have a traveler's notebook to use them. So that being said, I covered it with this beautiful tapestry fabric, collaged on some vintage trim and this lace trim which has these beads and buttons dangling from it, and a vintage image of a gypsy, which I love the coloring and the brightness of this picture. This one and one other is what inspired the colors of this journal, which is later on in the book and I'll show you. There's a black lace pocket which runs from the front to the back. A large tag for some journaling with sari silk. This is a stamped image that I did some watercolor washes on, which can also be for journaling. Some trim and vintage buttons stitched on here. A little bag with a tiny tag in it, which I did some stamping and stitched some more sari silk to. Large pocket I stamped and did some collaging with some stenciled book pages. A vintage image of a cigarette card, and this is avocado dyed paper. It has great texture to that. A lace flip here. Some stamping. A bit of fabric stitched on here, which is pretty chenille with some gold in it, and an image of a lunar moth. It makes a little pocket. A tuck spot here with a vintage image for some journaling, and this is there's an image behind it. It's hard to tell. In the right light you can see it, but it's been gilded to look kind of like a coin, and it is also a tuck spot. And a label here you can also write on. Some paper collaged there. This is a bead and feather charm pinned onto this tab. fabric tab. Clipped onto this paper is an envelope which has some sari silk stitched to the bottom. On the top here I just looped through a tag which I did some collaging with some fabric and trims and a vintage image, and I stamped on the back of it, and it is just being held on with a bulldog clip. Some vintage sheet music paper which has been reinforced with washi tape. This is the other gypsy image I was talking about, which is very bright and colorful, which is what inspired the colors of the journal, and that you can also journal on the back of. It just tucks here in this tuck spot, which I believe, yes, this is also a tuck spot here. And here's some napkin decoupaged onto this paper, and I took some of the threads that comes off of this fabric when it's frayed, and I really like the colors, so I stitched them onto this in a way that looks sort of like a flower. Very eclectic. Some stamping here. It's a bridge score sheet flip collaged with some fabric. And again, I left the strings long so you can add beads or charms. A little tuck spot here with this Tom Thumb card in it. It's a nickel sleeve, coin tube. I don't remember what they're called. It's more of that collage napkin. A large bead charm here, which is pinned onto this ruffled trim. Sheet music. An envelope here with just some extra journaling paper in it and some of that fabric. Another gypsy image, and on this clip is a little gypsy bell. And I have these clipped together. Which, more writing space, ledger paper, collage down here with just some images of stamps and some paper. Avocado dyed paper, a lace tab, and some little beads here. A vintage receipt stapled on the top there for a flip, and another flip here which has some, what is that, stamped flowers. And then the pocket here, this has a like a card. This is a hand carved stamp, and no, it is not a tuck spot. I thought it was a tuck spot behind it. It is not. There's a tag with some lace on it, and a little booklet made with some extra little pieces of paper for writing and journaling. And it has some little beads on the threads used to stitch it together. Get the beads. Get the beads. A little tab here with some stamping of a rose. Yeah, and it was stitched on with some sari silk, and it makes a little tuck spot for this little tag. And this again is just another little packet of goodies and a journaling card. And there is the Boho Gypsy journal. And then quickly, I just want to show you, this is a file folder which is tied with some muslin which has been inked and grunged up. Has some sari silk sewn down the spine. It opens like so, which has, well, I guess I should tell you, there's a pocket on the front first with some vintage floral images and a frame. There is a clip here with a little gypsy bell, and it's holding in a tag which I've done some stamping. It says Wild and Free, and you can journal on the back of that. It has sari silk on it as well. I covered it front and back with this map scrapbook paper stitched around everything. Now it opens like this, and there are some images here of some gypsies. This is from a children's storybook of a little girl selling a rabbit to a family, and a gypsy family here in their camp. Image, a vintage image. These were from Graphics Fairy. This is one of my own. Some extra writing paper. Some vintage lace is stitched on here, and pinned to it is another one of those beaded charms. In this pocket is a coffee dyed index card with some trim and lace stitched to it. Some extra writing paper, says delight in little things. And then this opens again, and you have a trim tuck spot here with a vintage image and some coffee dyed papers, onion skin paper, and a vintage image together, just stapled together. It's a vintage image, some coffee dyed paper which I stamped. It's a vintage fabric pocket and some lace, a vintage image here, and just tucked in there is just another, it's like a documentation paper. It's a picture of a gypsy vintage image, also from Graphics Fairy, and a document which you can also journal on the back of. On this far side is a belly band type of tuck spot, which has a perpetual calendar tag and a vellum envelope, which I embossed and did some, put some gilding wax on. Inside that is a fabric, it's like a fabric swatch collection, I guess you could call it. It has all these different fabrics stapled together with a little tag. And they all go in here like so. And that is what I have been busy making this week. So they will be listed in my Etsy, of course. So go check them out if you're interested. Thank you for watching and have a great day, guys. Bye.